the concept that most students forget. Like, it is really easy to understand, but if you don't, like, continuously practice with it and continually talk about it, you're going to forget it, because that's how easy of a concept it is. But it's one of those things that it's like, you have to memorize it. Okay, so absolute value. I'm going to give you guys the definition because you have to memorize this definition. I don't care if you reword it to be your own, but it must be memorized. Is that understood? All right, so absolute value is the distance a number is away from 0 on a number line. So it is the distance a number is away from 0 on a number line. So, let's say I want to know the absolute value of -6. So I'm going to put a dot on 6 because I want to know the absolute value of -6. Well, it is the distance a number is away from 0. So all I have to do is count how far away is -6 from 0 on a number line. So if I take this and I count, I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many?
6.
So the absolute value of -6 is 6. Because it is 6 spaces away from 0 on a number line. Does that make sense, everyone? Okay. What if I gave you, I want the absolute value of 4. Once again, it is the distance a number is away from 0 on a number line. So I count from 4 to 0. How many spaces is that?
4.
So the absolute value of 4 is 4. Any questions so far? Now, we don't always want to have to use a number line, right, guys? We want to be able to do this without having to draw a number line, correct? So typically, you're going to see something that looks like this. Absolute value is represented by this symbol. It is 2 lines that are straight up and down, and the number is on the inside of them. So for instance, we said the absolute value of -6. That's what it looks like. It's 2 lines straight up and down with the number on the inside. I know it looks weird handwritten because people are like, that looks like 1 minus 61, right, guys? Okay? It's a lot easier to tell on a computer-generated thing. Okay? It's a lot harder because I have written it. Does that make sense? So, like this. So, like, this is what you guys would see on your homework assignment.
Oh, yeah.
So, do you see how it's a little easier to tell from a computer generated than versus me writing it thing? Does that make sense? Okay, so that's what I'm talking about, okay? So, what did we say? The absolute value of -6 is what? Is 6. And then we said the absolute value of 4 is 4. That's literally your answer. 6 and 4. That's your answer. That's it. Okay, so what did we just say? If we started at -6 and moved to the right, how many spaces did it take to arrive at 0, everyone?
6.
Okay, what if we started at +6? How many spaces would it take to get to 0?
6.
So whether we start at -6 or whether we start at a +6, it is 6 spaces to get to 0, either way. So, what conclusion or conclusions can you make about absolute value? What are some things you're noticing? Joe?
That, like, no matter, like, the number, like, if you, like, do the 10, it will be 10.
Excellent.
It won't be a different number.
Absolutely. So it is always the number that is given. So always the number given. It stays the same. So if the number is a 5, it's a 5. If the number is a 10, it's a 10. If it's 5.5, it's 5.5. I don't care if they're decimals. I don't care if they're fractions. I don't care if they're whole numbers. It doesn't matter. Whatever the number is, it stays the same. Does that make sense, everyone?
Yeah.
What else have you noticed? Connor? Yep. So that's this thing right here. It's always going to be that number that's given. What else, Cooper?
Has a negative sign, you take that away.
So if it's a negative, it ends up being a positive. But what if it's a positive?
Stays positive.
It stays positive, which means my answer is always.
Positive.
So it's always a positive answer. Which is why you don't need a number line every time, because it's whatever the number is, but it's always positive, because it is the distance a number is away from 0. And that is why absolute value of a number is positive, because distance is always a positive number. Guys, we do not ever talk about distance being negative, right? We don't ever say, I drove -5 miles today. That doesn't make any sense, does it?
No.
There's no such thing of, I walked -3 miles. No one wants to say that, right? That makes no sense. Distance is always positive, which is why absolute value is always positive.
Unless you raise backwards on the graph.
Still would be a positive integer, though.
Oh,
Because you're
yeah.
still, like, even though the direction may be a negative, like, that doesn't mean the distance part is negative. Okay, let's go to the next page because I have a few other things I want to show you. So let's title it Absolute Value. Okay, so let's do a few examples, guys. So if I give you that right there, write down your answer for me. What's this say, everyone? Read this out loud. What's this say?
-42.
So other way, you say it's the asking for the absolute value of -42. Everyone say that out loud.
Absolute value of -42.
Which is?
42.
And that's all your answer is that right there. Nothing else.
I can kind of see how people can forget it.
Yep. All right, try this one for me. What is it, everyone? Absolute value of of 38, which is?
38.
Questions on that? Okay, what if I gave you something like this?
Ooh.
What do you think I need to do? What do you think, Eva?
Change them to positive numbers.
Okay, I must do absolute value first. Absolute value, guys, is like parentheses. How many of you guys remember your order of operations?
PEMDAS.
Your PEMDAS. Absolute value is like parentheses, so you have to do it first, which means we have to find the absolute value of -8 and the absolute value of -4. So everyone, what is the absolute value of -8?
8.
What is the absolute value of -4?
4.
Now what's my problem say?
8 plus 4.
Which is?
12.
So what's the absolute value of 0? Just 0?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
0. Absolute.
Okay, do this one for me. What do I have to do first, everyone? Absolute value of -16 is?
16.
Absolute value of 4 is?
4.
16 minus 4 is?
12.
Alright, any questions on absolute value?
No.
No.
Okay. Now you know kind of why I meant it's a really easy topic, but also really easy to forget.
Yeah.
Because they don't actually ask you for absolute value ever, do they? They just give you that symbol. So if you don't remember that that symbol means absolute value, you're kind of out of luck, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll continue practicing it. You do need to have that definition memorized. So what's the definition of absolute value again?
How much space is it between the zero?
Just a number is away from a 0 on a number line.
Okay, good. Up here. Everyone read it out loud. What's the definition of absolute value?
Value is the distance of a number is away from a 0 on a number line.
You guys need to have that memorized. Is that clear?
Yes.
All right, there's one other thing we need to talk about, which is why I don't know why people are doing whatever they want to do, because we're not done with notes. Okay, so that's absolute value. One other thing that we kind of need to talk about is opposites, because opposites are really similar to absolute value, right, guys?
Yeah.
Like if I asked you for what is the opposite if I asked you for what is the opposite of 24, what would you tell me?
-24.
The opposite of 24 is a -24. That's the opposite of it. Do you see the difference between opposites and absolute value?
Yes.
Okay, because you have to know both. So what if I asked you for what is the opposite of -16? The opposite of a negative is a positive. I should be writing this down. Guys, if I write it, you write it. Okay, what about this? What if I said, what is the opposite don't say it out loud yet, of 24? Don't say it out loud yet. But this time I said, what's the opposite? There's two opposites. So what do you think the opposite of 24 is, everyone?
24.
24. Because if the opposite is a negative 24, the opposite is a 24, which means the answer essentially stays the same. It's
So
just
if it's-
canceling out.
So if it's the opposite of an opposite, it's gonna be 24. It's gonna be negative 24.
Colo, next time raise your hand, bud. Okay. On your homework assignment tonight, guys, you're going to see whole numbers, you're going to see decimals, you're going to see fractions. You do everything exactly the same. Is that understood? Okay. Last thing I want to talk about that you will see on your homework is they're going to say something like, give me a number that is 20 units to the left on a number line. So give me a number that is 20 units to the left on a number line. What do you think that is?
Negative.
What do you think, Hattie?
Is it the absolute value of negative 20?
Well, I don't need the absolute value part, so I just need
Negative 20.
negative 20. Why is it a negative, Hattie?
Because negative is always on the left side of number line.
Absolutely. It's to the left. On the left side is negative numbers, which means it's negative 20. What if I would have flipped this around and I would have said 20 units to the right? What would 20 units to the right have been, everyone?
20.
That just would have been a 20 or a positive 20 because to the right is positive. All right, guys, questions at all? Connor. Same thing. The opposite of 1/2 is a negative 1/2. It's nope. So literally opposites just mean positive and negatives. That's all opposites are. Is it a positive or is it a negative? That's it. Does that make sense, everyone? Because that was a really good question.
Yeah.
So literally do everything exactly the same with decimals and fractions. It's just whether it's a positive or a negative. Yes, ma'am.
Homework